For 9 days, the mountain gave back nothing. Outside the cave, rescuers could hear the pumps running, the rain hitting the trees, and the voices of families waiting for news. But from inside, there was only darkness. 7 men had entered the cave looking for gold. Then the rain came. The entrance flooded, mud shifted, rock blocked the way out, and somewhere deep underground, the men were trapped in a place where daylight could not reach them, where the water kept rising, and where every hour made the question harder to ask. Were they still alive? When divers finally pushed through the black water and narrow stone passages, they were not expecting a miracle. But then, in the beam of a headlamp, they saw something move. The story began in Sambang province, a rugged part of central Laos, about 120 kilometers north of Vientiane. It is a place of steep green mountains, remote villages, and caves that can look still from the outside, while hiding entire worlds underneath. Around May 20th, 2026, a group of local villagers entered one of those cave systems. According to reports, they were looking for gold or valuable minerals, the kind of work people often do not because it is safe, but because the land around them is tied to survival. This was not a guided adventure. It was not a tourist road with lights, signs, and a clean path back to the entrance. It was a rough, mined-out cave system, difficult to understand, easy to underestimate, and dangerous when the weather turned. At first, the danger was probably not obvious. The men had gone underground with supplies. People who enter places like this often know they may be inside for days. They understand the darkness. They understand the tight spaces. What they cannot always control is what happens outside while they are below. Then the rain came. In the mountains, rain does not stay where it falls. It runs down slopes, gathers force, carries mud, moves stone, and finds every opening in the earth. A cave entrance that looks manageable in the morning can become a channel for floodwater by afternoon. Heavy rain triggered flash flooding and landslides. The way out was blocked. Water pushed into the cave system. Passages that had been walkable became flooded. The entrance was no longer just an entrance. It was a barrier. By the time rescuers understood what had happened, 7 Lao nationals were believed to be cut off inside. Reports said another villager managed to get out and raise the alarm, and that single escape may have been the reason the rescue began at all. Outside the cave, the first response grew quickly. Lao rescuers were joined by Thai volunteer teams, and then by specialist divers from other countries. Some of them had been involved in the famous Thai cave rescue in 2018, when 12 schoolboys and their coach were brought out alive from a flooded cave in northern Thailand. That connection gave the Laos operation a familiar shape from a distance divers. Ropes, pumps, headlamps, families waiting at the edge of darkness. But this was not the same rescue. This cave was different. The people trapped inside were not children on a team outing. They were villagers who had gone underground for work. The site was remote, muddy, narrow, and poorly mapped, and the water inside was not clear enough to see through. One Australian diver involved in the effort described the water as essentially like diving in coffee. That image sounds simple, but for a cave diver, it means something terrifying. It means no visibility. It means you cannot rely on your eyes. You move by touch, by memory, by rope, and by discipline. In open water, a diver can rise toward light. In a cave, there may be no up that leads anywhere. A wrong turn can take you deeper. A loose rope can become a lifeline or a trap. A tired survivor can panic. A rescuer can become stuck. And all of it can happen in silence, under rock, far from help. The rescue teams pumped water from the cave, searched for alternate entrances, and tried to understand a system that even the survivors did not fully know. They studied the mountain from the outside, looking for air shafts or dry passages that might lead around the flooded sections. But the rain kept complicating everything. Every time water returned, the rescue changed. A passage that had lowered enough to crawl through could flood again. A route that seemed possible in the morning could become too dangerous by night. Then, after days of searching, 2 divers pushed through the flooded passage and found the first real answer. Finnish cave diver Mikko Pasi and Thai diver Norris Palasing made it deep enough into the system to reach a chamber around 350 meters from the entrance. There, on a rocky shelf above the water, they found 5 men alive. The images from that moment were almost impossible to process. The men looked exhausted, pale and weak, but they were conscious. They were able to smile. Some cried with relief. For more than a week, they had been sitting in darkness, listening to water move around them, not knowing whether anyone outside could still reach them. Rescuers gave them water, soft food, and foil blankets. The men needed strength, but even that had to be handled carefully. After days without proper food, the body cannot simply return to normal because help has arrived. And then came the hardest decision: how to get them out. There were 2 options, and neither was easy. If the water stayed high, the men might have to be guided through flooded sections using breathing regulators, through passages where visibility was almost nothing. That would be dangerous even for trained divers. For weekend survivors, it was far more risky. The other option was to keep pumping water, wait for levels to fall, and hope the men could crawl or walk out through sections that had been submerged. Waiting felt cruel, but rushing could be worse. On Friday, May 29, the first man was brought out. Specialist divers guided him through a narrow flooded section, and the extraction took more than half an hour. When he finally reached the cave entrance, he was covered in mud, wearing a headlamp, and moving unsteadily with help from rescuers. For the people outside, it was proof that the cave could give someone back. But 4 known survivors were still inside, and 2 others remained unaccounted for. The rescue teams paused and assessed the situation. The remaining men were weak, and the cave was still dangerous. Water had to be moved. Roads had to be checked. Every meter mattered. Then, on Saturday evening, something happened that even some rescuers did not expect. After days of pumping lowered the water level, the remaining 4 survivors emerged from the cave. They were able to walk out, exhausted and shaken, but alive. There were emotional reunions. Images later showed the rescued men in a clinic, sitting upright in hospital beds, receiving fluids through IV drips. They smiled faintly, the kind of smile that does not erase what happened, but proves they made it back to the world. 5 men had survived more than a week underground, but the story did not become simple because 2 people were still believed to be missing. That is the part of the Laos Cave Rescue that sits heavily. Joy and dread existed side by side. Families could embrace the rescued, while other families still waited. Rescuers could celebrate 5 lives saved, but they could not walk away from the 2 names still inside the mountain. The rescued men reportedly gave search teams important information about the cave beyond the chamber where they had been trapped. There was believed to be another passage, possibly tighter and more dangerous, leading farther into the system. Rescuers discussed the possibility of an air pocket deeper inside, but reaching it would mean pushing through more flooded, narrow, unstable ground. By then, every decision carried a terrible weight. If the missing men had survived the first flood, they had already endured more than 10 days underground. But if rescuers entered too aggressively, they risked adding more people to the emergency. So the operation continued carefully. Pumps kept running. Teams looked for alternate access from above. Divers prepared for conditions that could change with the next rain. From a distance, Rescue stories often look like stories of equipment and expertise. Divers arrive, pumps are installed, ropes disappear into darkness, a plan is made. But close up, they are stories of people being asked to move toward danger, while everyone else waits at the edge. A rescuer entering water so dark they cannot see their own hand. A survivor trying to control his breathing after days underground. A family member watching the cave mouth, searching every headlamp for the face they know. And somewhere beyond the reach of the lights, the mountain stays quiet. The Laos Cave Rescue became a story of 5 people brought back from a place that could easily have kept them. But it also remained unfinished because not everyone had come out. That is what makes it difficult to turn into a clean survival story. The rescue gave the world relief, but not certainty. It gave families miracles, but not all of them. And in the end, the most frightening thing about a flooded cave is not only the darkness, or the water, or the rock pressing in from every side. It is the waiting. Waiting for the rain to stop. Waiting for the water to drop. Waiting for a rescuer to return. Waiting for a sound from somewhere deeper inside. And hoping that in the dark, someone is still waiting too.